afraid.
So welcome to the Heartwork and Philosophy Guild meeting. We just had a really quick check-in because we have a short time to meet today. And the check-in question was, if you're doing okay, give us a thumbs up. We got 2 thumbs up out of 3, so not bad. Over to you, Ben, Rachel, whoever.
Well, I think in that spirit, I'm sharing the screen, so we've got our agreements up, and I think we generally all know them, and I'm going to propose a quick round. What's the agreement that is top of mind for you today in terms of how do we want to be with each other? How do we want to show up today? The circle, as I see it, is Roland, April, me. So Roland, what's the agreement that is top of mind for you?
The agreement that's top of mind for me is the session is recorded and we post it to YouTube. No, I'm kidding. It is both and. So am I passing to April? Over to you, April.
Thank you. Listen for understanding where I'm at with this, and on to Ben.
We're all in this together. That's always my go-to. All right. We are in a somewhat unusual space because we're in between, we're sort of both heartwork and delegated coordination circle, since we're in the process of finalizing our fall semester schedule. So we have been tasked with a few things as part of the getting ready for the fall semester. We still, as Heartwork, are focused on the emotional heart and the connection aspect of the Lifeboat Academy, creating opportunities for people to develop relationships with themselves and each other, and all our relations is our main function. So I think then it's really, we've got our action items from the last meeting we had together, and I am noticing that many of them are not clicked off, and many of them are mine. Part of the reason why I'm feeling frazzled. We have as our agenda advancing the Connect the Dots Club, and that's really kind of our main responsibility with the fall schedule. And one other, I'm trying to remember, what was the other thing we were tasked with from the coordination circle? I can check on that. And the establishing the Heartwork and Philosophy badges is actually something that I think flows out of the Connect the Dots. I think it's something that will come from Connect the Dots. But it's still on the list there as a reminder that we should return to it. With that in mind, a quick round, what's on the top of your head for today in terms of how can we best use this time together? What are you hoping to get from the meeting itself? So, Roland, any thoughts on today's agenda?
Just the date for the first Connect the Dots Club is coming up, and yeah, so we got working on that, on because there's a lead up and such. And there are likely tasks. I'm imagining primarily around letting people know, and I can tell you right now so that Ben, you don't feel like there's going to be more added to your list of things to do. That kind of thing is the type of thing in the outreach guild that I have a tendency of being involved in. So over to April.
Yeah, I have the same concerns as Roland. I also think there's probably some stuff that I'm forgetting from 2 weeks ago now that I might have said I would do, but I don't even know what those things are now. I just have that sense. And also the thing about connecting to outreach, there was something about that too that was in the back of my head. So really, I need to be reminded and reacquainted, I guess, with this. On to
Mhm. I do think the notes are up to date, so I think all of the action items that we talked about are here. So there's the small thing of adding to the North Star to the Connect the Dots board and inviting people to start filling out that board. The date that we've picked, I think, is September 9th. Is that right for the first Connect the Dots Club? Hang
I'd
on.
like to check the calendar to see if
10th, I think. Yeah, because it's the first. Yeah, can you check the calendar? And I'm going to bring up the fall calendar Miro board.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, September 10th is what we currently have scheduled. We can alter that too if we want to go back to the 17th. I think what we're committed to is we didn't want to do anything the first week of September, and we're going to keep with the Tuesday 5 o'clock spot for the Connect the Dots. So
it's not actually on the calendar, so I'm going to put it on now.
okay, cool. All right. I am just gonna also check quickly. I'm gonna stop my share so that I can look in Asana for the from the last coordination. Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at once. Oh, here we go. Heartwork will schedule flesh out the agreement circle. That's the other thing. Roland was suggesting that we need to, and I can add that. All right, cool. So, all right. Okay, so we've got, that's the other thing that came from the coordination circle was figuring out how we want to work that through. So what I'm going to propose is that we do a quick sort of a check-in, probably 2 rounds in on the Connect the Dots Club. We've kind of started to talk about it. What are some of the tasks and things that we need to do to move forward on the Connect the Dots Club over and above what we already have listed? So we've got adding the North Star, and we've got inviting people to the board and coordinating with outreach on invitations and such. And we've got forming the facilitation team, which is on my list of things to do. So is there anything else that we haven't talked about that we need to talk through in terms of moving forward on the Connect the Dots Club? Roland, over to you. Anything coming to mind?
Can't think of anything. No, over to April.
I can't think of anything other than informing people about what they need to know know that this is on the horizon and the calendar, and to figure out how many reminders people need, that sort of thing. Over to Ben.
Cool. All right. Well, then let's just power through things as best we can in the time we have. I think the North Star for the Miro board for the Connect the Dots Club, we already have language for that. It's really just moving that onto the Miro board. And specifically, I'm thinking in the here, in the task for the Connect the Dots Club, we have what the purpose is and what's the focus. So from that, we'll be able to pull whatever we need. I can pull that out pretty easily. So then forming the facilitation team, or I guess actually anything, do people have any additional thoughts on that? Nothing from Roland, nothing. Okay, cool. In terms of forming the Connect the Dots facilitation team, I was thinking about this the other day. What I'm going to propose is that it is an open invitation to any members of the guilds, any guilds, that they can be on the facilitation team, with an understanding that we have an agreement about what the Connect the Dots Club is and how it's working. So that is not negotiable. Everyone in the guilds has had full information about the conversations, has had access to the videos and the discussions. If they had any objections prior to this, then it was their responsibility to voice them. Yeah, Roland.
So we're done with R&D. We're now looking for people who want to be facilitators. So this is an opportunity for them to practice and build their facilitation skills or to apply their facilitation skills.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I was going to frame it. And I mean, obviously there's still creative work to be done in figuring, we have the broad outlines of, how we know what we want to get done in the sessions. And so there's still room for creativity in terms of how you shape the sessions. But we're not revisiting the purpose or the goals of the Connect the Dots Club. So yeah, that was my plan for that. Any friendly amendments to that proposal? Roll on over to you.
Go for it. Over to April.
Also go forth.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so then in terms of coordinating with outreach, which will be meeting on Wednesday, so this is very timely. We know that we want to do an early invitation for people to add to the Connect the Dots board, and that is a low stakes, low risk. It's good enough now. If nobody takes us up on that offer, okay. And if people do, great. And it could be a way for people to see what kinds of resources are already there, familiarize themselves. So I think it's a very friendly invitation. Take a look. This is what we'll be talking about. Likewise, I think if you're curious and not sure whether you want to join the Connect the Dots, look at the board, right? And get a sense of what we're talking about. And we know that there will be a general newsletter email that will go out to everyone. And we'd already talked about, I believe, that we were going to extend the invitation to the Connect the Dots Club specifically in a separate email to people that took part in the 6 conversations.
Right. Yeah.
Any members of the guilds. I feel like there was one other list.
So 6 conversations, guild members.
And then the general newsletter list.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I think, and are there any people specifically that we want to invite? I think that was the other part of it. So that may be, if there's anybody not in the 6 conversations or not on the guild list
Great.
that we specifically want to reach out to. Like Christine, actually, Christine Spender just came for a visit, and I don't think that she's on either of those lists, but I think she would be a great person
Yeah.
to invite.
I think the CJ group.
Oh, right, CJ group.
Is that PJ as in pajamas?
No, CJ as in community justice.
Oh, sorry.
It must be my mustache. It's garbling my words.
So I think what in just in the interest of time, I think what I'm going to say is if there are for those of us in the Heartwork Guild to think specifically if there's anybody that we want individually, if there's anybody that we want to make a special invitation to. And then I'm more than happy to be the conduit for that. So if you want to just email me any ideas, I can make sure that they go on whatever our master list is.
Hey, April, would your maestro be interested?
Uh, good question. Interested, but probably not able to do it due to scheduling,
Mhm.
I think. However, next time I talk to her, I'll pass on the invite.
All right. So just wash my hands. I can't do a thing with them. Uh,
So what about also people who've attended navigation sessions and people who
Oh.
attended the first, because you've done a few webinars for the lifeboat webinars. You must, if you still have that list somewhere.
Mhm. That's a harder one. The navigation session list is easy. So we can add that. We should actually put together like a perpetual list of people that have attended webinars.
So
Yeah.
that's that would be something to bring forward to the outreach guild, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else to add to the invitation list?
No.
All right. Do we want to cover any important things that people need to know? Obviously, the purpose. So matching whatever we put on the Miro board, we'll want to make sure that and things like timing and commitment. What else do we want to?
Experiment. The fact that this is an experiment too, or time limited sort of run at it.
Mhm. I think we're kind of in popcorn mode. So Roland, if there's anything you want to throw
Oh, I
in.
was just thinking this would be a draw for me, going deeper into the materials that inspire the Lifeboat Academy.
That makes me think that in addition to the experiment, it's I'm going to say a first step
Mm-hmm.
because we're creating a survey. We're creating the map of the materials, and we won't necessarily go into each of them deeply in the first 4 sessions, but it becomes a springboard.
Or everything else.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else? I feel like, I mean, we want to keep the message short.
Yeah.
So I think this pretty much covers it. I just, make sure that we're not forgetting something important.
I guess it also depends on what the facilitation group decides as for the format. Uh, and it may not be necessary for what people need to know right now, but it probably would be good to be able to say, we'll be doing it. It'll be like this. This is
Mhm.
what the class would look like,
Ah.
or the group or whatever.
Well, and I think what we can say is that we'll be working on the Miro board. It'll be a visual exercise, a real-time visual exercise, which links to go check out the board. All right. Zach,
There's something for me too about the fact that you'll get a chance to be with a bunch of other people who probably have some of the same curiosities and the same stuff that grabs you as an individual. Yeah.
yeah. And actually, we might just use that phrase, a chance to hang out with the cool kids. And by
During a
cool, we
climate
mean geeky.
during a climate crisis, hanging out with the cool kids is
Uh,
probably a draw.
Mm-hmm.
Ba-dum-bum-ching. Gallows humor, hooray!
We bring our own natural AC to the party. All right. Oh, well, and I guess actually, do we want to stick with the 10th, I think, or do we want to pop it back to the 17th? I'm good with the 10th, but
yeah.
I'm
Do
not
we have
facilitating, so it's all the same to me.
do we have time to get the invitations out and get the facilitation team on board?
uh all these practical questions. Ah. We are 1, 2, 3 weeks out. So the invitation could easily go out tomorrow. So that gives us 3 weeks for the invitations. I think that's plenty of time. And it's one before the beginning of September, another one after September, so um, there's getting people on people's radar and then actually getting on their radar again when they're back from,
Yeah.
summer blur. Yeah. I actually don't go back and forth on this. I feel like delaying things never helps.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like giving people more warning does not seem actually to make much of a difference. I think most people are making their decision the week before. And as long as you've got something that's a week before and a day before, it's kind of, that's all good. And in terms of facilitation, I really think that we've got a good enough process laid out that this is, we could gild the lily, but I think we've got what we need for it to work. So no objections to moving forward on the 10th.
Right.
Maybe some concerns, but no objections. All right, cool. So what was so the agreement circle. Um, where are we with that? And I think Roland, it was kind of your idea. Do you want to talk a little bit about the idea there?
Sure. The genesis is our morning agreements circle has been progressing and evolving here. And at first, it was all about figuring out a mantra for the day, and starting out with agreements as sort of like this quick thing at the beginning, and then go into discussing mantras. And then we started to notice that I started noticing that the agreements, at least I did, should speak for myself. The agreements were getting longer and longer, sort of like explaining what they meant and starting to see connections between the different agreements. And then the agreements sort of really started to sound a lot like how we wanted to live our day and how we wanted to live our lives. So now we have a tendency of focusing on the agreements, and then by talking through the agreements, of how do you want to show up, how do you want to live your day, how do you want to live your life. In talking through the agreements, we eventually come to a mantra at the end. And I talk to people, and I keep thinking, I just want to sit down and have an agreements discussion, because I feel like it would be really useful. And when I actually do that, and I don't necessarily do it formally, but informally, if I have an opportunity to be able to actually talk about, you know, tell me what you mean by that, or what's important for you, and do a circle with it. It seems to be really powerful and healing. Um, and uh, and at the beginning of the guilds, we talk about agreements, some guilds more than others. And it also doesn't feel like the time to go into deeply into what the agreements are. Um, so as Heartwork and Philosophy, being able to talk about the agreements seems like a really important
Yeah.
element in the Lifeboat Academy functioning, the people that are part of the Lifeboat Academy functioning together, and understanding where people are coming from. And so having regular meetings, where people can just talk about, how do we want to be together? How do we want to work together? How do I want to live my life? Seems like kind of a core activity in my mind, because it is a core activity for me, and I know how much it has helped me, um, incredibly a lot, very much. So that's all of my thinking as I see it in this very moment, which will probably change in the next 7 minutes. 7 minutes. So are we popcorning, or should I pass on
I
to
think
April?
I think pass to April for considerations.
Um, yeah, I think this is a really important thing to do too. And I think even just choosing one of the agreements to have a discussion about, or surveying folks to just say what is the agreement to which you are most committed, or something of that kind, or what agreement do you find most useful in your existence currently, um, can lead to all kinds of stuff. That's it. Over to Ben.
I totally agree on the value of it. My only concern is being able to engage people with it. Because I'm not sure that out of the gate, well, actually, even Roland, I have from the very beginning thought the morning circle was primarily to discuss the agreements and to reaffirm the agreements, and that the mantra was always a side note. And so, that was part of anyhow. And I think that is an evolution where you think it's kind of, I don't think people really understand the importance of the agreements. So it may be hard to get people interested in it. But I agree. I think it's real. And then I guess my second question would be, how often is it necessary, or how does it fit in a way where it feels like people would be encouraged to attend? Over to you, Roland.
Well, format is very important. I agree, and because the format that we had before was agreements, which tended to be one-liners, at the beginning of the circle, and then moving into mantras. So in the same way, um, uh, I think it depends on what and this is beyond my ken at the moment. What do we want the agreement circle to do? Um, if it's very frequent, then, and which is like once a week, then what does that mean? What does that look like for the people attending? If it's once a month, that's 12 times in a year. That feels like it would play a different, it would be different. It would, yeah, it would be experienced differently. Um, yeah, do you sign up? Is it drop in? There's all sorts of possible formats in which it could take. And I can start exploring the different formats. I and maybe this is the magic of the circle would help me to figure out what the impact that the different formats would have. So over to April.
Yeah, I think the format is really important. I'm inclined to look at it once a month as a once-a-month occasion, because I worry about how many other meetings that there are during the week on kind of a regular basis. And if they're weekly, I'm not going to make many of them. If they're once a month, I'll make a special effort. I think it would be nice to think we could do a drop-in, but I think it's more realistic to ask for sign-ups and subcommitment for a length of time, over a length of time. And it has to be as lightly facilitated as any of the other things that we do. And that's it, over to Ben, but I also have to go now. So, adieu. And
Okay.
Well, should we just close the meeting then?
No, I think we should keep going, and
Okay.
we can keep, well, and it's recorded, and so then actually April can go and look at the last however many minutes and kind of add to that.
Okay.
great. And then can I just check, we're meeting at 4:30 for coordination?
What,
Are we
today?
Today is today.
No.
Okay.
No, next week is coordination.
Great. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Okay. I had a little panic there for a second. What? No, no, no. All right.
Over to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how we can do it, because I think, I was just talking, when you were talking about in the early days with the agreements, we did do them one at a time, which was initially we didn't. Initially, the question is, my understanding, my memory of this is the initial question is, what do you need to be present and show up? It's not what are the agreements. It's actually the agreements come from what do you need to be present and show up. And when we started, people would go on and on about what they need to be present and show up. And things bogged down. And I think that's where we went to one thing at a time.
Mm.
And then somehow that turned into one agreement at a time. And it became somewhat mechanical. But from the beginning, I'd always thought about it as what do you need to be present and show up today? So it was always meant as a reflection process. But I don't think that that gets conveyed easily. I think the natural way for people to think about it is there are agreements, and we are just rehearsing the agreements. And I guess actually the other thing that I'm wondering about is what is the relationship between navigation sessions and an agreement circle? Because they seem like there's a lot of similarity there, because they're both opportunities for people to pause and reflect on how they're going and what they need. Um, and maybe it's actually a more useful reframing of the navigation sessions. You know, if the navigation sessions are framed not as whatever, you know, how we're talking about it now, an opportunity for shared learning, but how do we want to be with each other? How do we want to work together? That might be more. I'm wondering about if that's the catch that would be more interesting to people. How do we want to show up and work together? It's just an open thought. Over to you.
Well, as April was talking, I was actually thinking it doesn't have um, one of the formats could be as, you know, this is a constant and regular activity all year, or it could also be on the rotating schedule of the 6 conversations, the 4 questions,
Mm,
so that it becomes more of a training. You know,
mm,
this is join us to do this, and it's also something that you can do with your own circle kind of thing. So that's another possibility. Um, yeah, and I hear what you're saying about the navigation sessions, and I feel like to me, there is a significant difference, and it could be useful to be able to parse out how the navigation sessions are used as opposed to agreement circles, because the navigation sessions prior to coining the name Lifeboat Academy was oh, well, no, actually, I don't. Anyway, my understanding of the genesis of the navigation sessions were for projects to help people move forward on their projects. And then it became more about navigating life and dealing with things that were going on in people's lives, which is, you know, part of moving a project forward. But then if the navigations can return to working more specifically on something that somebody is working on. And then the agreement circle is about uh, using circle to together, you know, since we're all in this together, which is one of the agreements, and we are vicarious, which is one of our agreements. Um, then circle becomes a useful way of being able to work on the heart work stuff that then helps the the concrete physical whatever projects that can be discussed in the navigation sessions. So I'm agreeing with what you were saying about reframing the navigation sessions, but I'm what I'm adding to that is that I think that there's room for 2 different things, the navigation sessions, which is more project oriented, and the agreement circles, which is more, I don't know, you're good with with these words. I'm not quite sure. So the emotive feeling, you know, the what do you do when you're feeling stuck? What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed kind of discussions, which
mhm,
is what I think happens a lot in the navigation sessions.
mhm,
So
mhm,
so this is to have both, to find room for both. So
mhm.
back to you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, a really interesting too, because I think that what sort of happened is we framed it as project specific, but a lot of the people who are showing up, the big problem is they can't get to the project because of the feeling part. like they start feeling overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And so they don't have what feel like concrete problems to deal with. And so it kind of defaults to the kind of feeling side of things. Yeah, that's really interesting. Um, and you know, in the spirit of experimentation, I feel like how do we set this up as a useful experiment? It might be useful to have both of them. You know, I'm thinking about the same thing happened with our uh our tension, whatever we were, when we were doing lifeboat specific navigation sessions that were supposed to be like groundwork, hive mind. We were calling them hive mind, where it was really supposed to be thinking through projects, and it kind of never happened because they kept changing. It was hard to keep the focus there. Um, and I wonder if that'll just keep happening. But I feel like there's a way. I think where I am right now is I'm wondering how far do we go working this through conceptually, or is it really just kind of put something out there and see? Um, what's the, what do they call it? MVP, the um, minimum viable product. You know,
Mhm.
what's the minimum viable way that we could put this forward? Um, yeah, I'll pass it over to you.
So when you're talking about what to put out, I think that this discussion can become what is it that we're putting out? Are we proposing having navigation sessions and agreement circles and trying to separate the two types so that if somebody in the navigation session says, I want to build a solar powered submarine, I don't know, I'm just making shit up. But I really can't because, I'm dealing with depression, then what do you do? Sort of turning to you as a facilitator is like, well, we can't talk about that right now, but we do have these agreement circles that might be useful for you. And that could be a perfectly acceptable thing to do, to say, we have resources, we're recognizing that to be able to show up fully, it has to be the whole person, physical, mental, emotional, and we need to make room for all of those. This is space for the physical, and we have space for the emotional, spiritual, um, and the two combine. But if you have any questions or anything that you're working on that you need to report on or need help with in terms of what kind of solar panels work best and in deep sea conditions, then that's something that we can talk about
Mm,
at the navigation in this navigation session. And I don't know if are you available for, and I'm just riffing because I'm putting myself in a scenario trying to
mhm,
figure, if can you make one of the agreement circles, and if not, we have individual, we've got office hours for individual sessions if you need to talk things through or something,
mhm,
something like that. Anyway,
mhm.
it's sort of like how can we protect space for specific kinds of activities without squashing what's coming up in the moment, you know? So
Yeah.
over to you with all of those questions and scenarios and deep sea
In,
solar.
in addition to deep sea solar panels. Uh, yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm feeling like there's it's probably useful to move on um, from this. It kind of feels like we're front loading and there needs to be some processing time to kind of figure things out. The navigation sessions, we've already talked about tweaking the navigation sessions, which is in outreach, I think. That's been tasked over there. And so I think actually this is has to go back to the coordination circle. Because I think we're identifying that there may be two sides to the same coin, or that there's definitely some sort of overlap here. So figuring out, it might be that we tweak the navigation sessions in a way. I'm just thinking out loud, so I don't even know if I believe any of the words that are coming out of my mouth. The project-oriented work, in a way, there's a danger if it becomes. So there's this idea of a sounding board where somebody gets the focus and one person comes in with a project and everyone talks about that project. And to make it more useful to more people, and the way the navigation sessions work is everyone talks about what's the current challenge they're experiencing, and then we work kind of collectively on the challenges that are coming up. And I'm just wondering, anyhow, I think that's why I'm thinking maybe this isn't useful to keep going into, because I feel like it just kind of it's pulling the thread on the sweater and it's just unraveling more and more and more. And I don't know that it needs to be that complicated. I feel like there's something about the agreements. Well, actually, and that's the other part. There is, what do I need to show up, which could be seen as a very internal, personal thing. Where's my courage? Where's my motivation coming from? How do I address my challenges? And then there's, how do we want to work together? And that's a totally different question, right? Because it's not just me showing up, it's also you and I having agreements about reciprocity and accountability and levels of commitment and things like that. So, I've confused myself. Over to you.
I think that what you're talking about there is a great agreement circle agreement to bring up, because you're talking about how do I want to show up, and I'm thinking how I show up is how I work with others. Uh, so so the internal and the external are actually all part of the same thing, the same movement. Um, and this is the kind of discussion that comes up when we have our agreement circles. And I
Right.
think it's a really useful, this is why I would like to have them for available for the Lifeboat Academy writ large, because I think that they are a really useful way of talking together about who and how am I, and who and how am I in relation to the collective, and who and how is the collective in relation to me, and how are we together. That's one of my agreements from today, was also and.
Mhm.
I will just note. And
Mhm.
I'm sort of thinking of the Lifeboat Academy as it grows and evolves, because having a certain number for circle would be really good, so that everyone has an opportunity to really go deep into things without having to worry about time.
Mhm.
And then, this cross-pollination of people from one circle going to another circle, to a different circle with different people, and just this, I'm really interested to see how things start to evolve. I just had this thought, it's a little bit like church
Mm.
coming together, and um, uh, I guess sort of witnessing each other, witnessing ourselves, witnessing us together.
Mhm.
Back to you.
Yeah, I feel like this is really expanding my understanding of what's possible here. And it was making me think, as you were talking, it was making me think about also an opportunity for people who might be leaders in their own project having a chance to debrief what's going on in their project without the other members of that project there necessarily. Not in a secretive sort of way, but kind of well, it's sort of one of the advantages of being an outside consultant is people have to explain things to me as a neutral third party. So they have to, question. I question any jargon. I question any sort of idiosyncratic assumptions, and that in itself is really, having the mirror, just putting the mirror in front of it is really useful. There's nothing I'm actually contributing, but it just gives people an opportunity to sort of step back from it. And this, that whole conversation, how are we together, um, and doing it in the Lifeboat Academy, thinking of, like Evelyn talks about, circle it's like the classroom for how to be a good person. And then you go out and use it. And it's the same thing. This could actually be the opportunity for people that are going to go back. So specifically, it is for people that are working with their own projects, working with their own teams, other teams, of other subsets. Um, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not sure where to go with this right now, but I feel like this is all good stuff. So I'm just going to throw it over to you.
Well, and I think I'm going to propose that we leave it for now. The last thing I wanted to say is, as part of the genesis for this idea, is hearing other people in other circumstances with other projects or things that they're involved in, just like saying things like, I just don't know what they were thinking about. And that wasn't my understanding at all of what we were going to be doing, and all of these things. And I come back to, but do you have agreements on how you're going to work together? Do you have agreements? Do you go over them? And and having experienced the power of the tool, and that it is the power of the tool as something that is long term. It's not about developing a checklist and every day you just check off the same old things.
Mhm.
It's the living creature of the oral tradition, where you speak it, and you speak it so that it's true for you in the moment, in that stage, in that place in your life, so that you're always revisiting. It's always evolving and changing and breathing. Yeah, and this is this. So this it's an observing outside of myself, outside of my experience, outside of my circles, and hearing people's frustrations, and where there's sort of fundamental communication that's not happening, and that often people are afraid of 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 um, communicating those fundamental elements, and at the same time being able to communicate those fundamental elements is really key to being able to work well together,
Mhm. Mhm.
as opposed to just leaving it to happenstance. Oh, I happen to work well with this person. Isn't that fantastic? I found someone. As opposed to, I can work with, there's all sorts of people that I thought I could never work with before. And because I'm able to more easily communicate these deeply, these at a deeper level about what's really important to all of us, and that we have this understanding, oh, this is important to all of us, so let's talk around how to make that happen. Anyway, I'm babbling now. Back to you.
You're doing some really high level babbling there.
That's why I won't remember it in about 2 minutes.
That's why I'm typing it. Well, I agree. I like your proposal. Let's kind of wrap this up and come back to it. But yeah, that last little bit, it really resonates with me, and it made me. I realized that there was sort of a disagreement. There was a misunderstanding about one of the things that we were talking about, because I kind of assume we start with the why, and we start with the deep why. That's just a given. Why are we doing this? So I think that's also coming out. It's not just the agreements of how do I want to show up, but why am I here? And why are we doing this? And that's something that is you can hint at it at the beginning of the guild meeting, reminding you of the purpose of the guild and what we're doing and why we're doing it. But there's something about connecting at that deep level of why, so it's not just how am I showing up, but why am I even showing? Why do I care to show up? Why do I care to work with people that I don't agree with necessarily? You know, yeah, there's something about the deep why in there that it seems really important. The deep why and the how are connected. So yeah, I'm that last little bit is feels really important. So I'm glad you babbled. And I'm ready to move on from this. If you are you okay to move on?
Oh, I can keep talking, but I think it's a good thing that we move on.
I agree. And I think that brings us really to the end. Um, yeah, I think we've done our agenda. And so I guess we're just at checkout. So I'm going to do a 2-round checkout. Any last thoughts for the good of the is there anything that is you need to talk about before we go? Anything that we're missing?
Well, I just want to make sure that I got what we're doing from this meeting. So so I'd like to just go over what I'm understanding.
Hmm.
So in terms of the Connect the Dots Club, it is going to outreach, or it is now in the hands of outreach to work on advertising, both for the start date and to invite people to the Miro board. And yeah, yeah, and that as part of outreach, I was saying that I'm also involved. We usually tend to be pretty involved in that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
yeah, so we're bringing this to the outreach guild, and then the Heartwork Guild is focusing on gathering the facilitation team and arranging meeting times to prepare for a
Hmm.
September 10th launch, which is 3 weeks away.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so back that's my understanding of what we're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. And then April will listen to the rest of this, and then we can come back, revisit the agreement circle thing. We don't have anything to bring to outreach at this point, or do we want to tell outreach that we're talking about another offering that could impact the format of the navigation sessions?
I think we can probably bring that up. I think that it's also goes back to coordination circle.
Okay,
I think that
coordination circle.
yeah, the agreement circle kind of got tasked out from the coordination circle, and I think that we've had a really good, useful conversation, and I think that conversation goes back to the coordination circle.
Okay,
So yeah, I think that's where that lands.
cool.
Yeah, and I think we've got basically yeah, the to-do items: updating the Miro board, forming the facilitation team, coordinating with outreach, and I think we've fleshed out some more So now I think we can hand outreach. Here's what we want, and how does that fit in with other communications that are going out, and
Okay.
detail that. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good to go. So then I'm gonna use a closing question from the CJ meeting that Daisy came up with that I really liked, which was, if you had the ability to communicate with any of our relations, from the rocks to the trees to the plants to the animals, and you could ask them one question, who would you ask and what would you ask? So that's our checkout question, and over to you, and you can pass if you want to, but it'll come back to you pretty quick.
How long is our checkout?
A sentence.
A sentence.
What's the top thing, the first one that comes to mind? Who would you, which relation would you talk to, and what would you ask?
Well, the top thing that I thought was oxygen, but I don't really know what I want to ask oxygen. I'd love to have a discussion. I'm just like, what's it like? Oxygen is kind of, I don't know. It feels eternal, and it has gone through everyone through time. Um, so something about that. But I don't know what exactly.
Hmm.
Anyway, that was my first thought. What about you?
My first thought earlier was Zelda, asking Zelda where
Oh,
she goes when we don't see her. Um,
that's a good
but
one.
that is a good one. It's definitely my go-to. Actually, my second one though is talking to the trees about, because they live so much longer than we do. What do we look like to them?
Hmm.
Do we just look like fuzz? Like, just a sort of a little vibration that kind of pops up and goes away. Do they even notice? How do trees see us? That would be my question. All right. On that note, very good, very quick, very powerful, or useful conversations today. So good on us. And see those of us at Outreach in 2 days. So bye.